watching the English newscast here on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are today's top stories. Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri says the recent political breakthrough in Lebanon is an opportunity to reaffirm the country's Arab identity and restore its ties with the GCC. An aide to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad affirms deep bilateral ties between Damascus and Beirut after meeting with Lebanese President Michel Aoun. And Iraqi Kurdish fighters are exchanging heavy fire with ISIL fighters as they advance from two directions on the town of Bashika. Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri says the recent political breakthrough in Lebanon was an opportunity to reaffirm the country's Arab identity and restore its ties with the Gulf Cooperation Council. During a meeting with the GCC ambassadors to Lebanon, Hariri said the GCC countries were vital to Lebanon's economy, adding that the Lebanese were proud and grateful for their support. Lebanon is anticipating aid from the international community to help it cope with the Syrian refugee crisis and revive its economy, knowing that the first aid was granted by the GCC, he said. The PM-designate said he was certain that the previous deterioration of diplomatic ties between Lebanon and the GCC was in the past. Just a reminder that relations between Lebanon and the GCC deteriorated after Saudi Arabia halted $4 billion in military grants to Lebanon and warned its citizens against traveling to the country in February. An aide to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad affirmed deep bilateral ties between Damascus and Beirut after meeting with Lebanese President Michel Aoun. The Syrian Minister of Presidential Affairs Mansour Fadlallah Azzam told reporters he was here to congratulate Aoun on his election on behalf of Assad. He said he hoped the new presidential term would fortify stability and security in Lebanon, which in turn would reflect on the stability and security in Syria and the region. He also said Aoun stressed the importance of the brotherly ties with Assad and the people of the two countries during the meeting. Azzam added that Lebanon and Syria had shared interests as they were both confronting two common enemies, Israel and terrorism. Our very own Yumna Naufal interviewed Future Movement MP Bassem El-Shab to discuss the latest developments in the country regarding the election of President Michel Aoun and the formation of the government of Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri. Here's part one of the exclusive.
Now, all eyes are on the formation of this new government, and I want to know, what can we expect and how fast can we expect it?
I think we can expect a fast formation of the government, and all hopes that we would have something before Independence Day on November the 22nd. And I must say that all parties concerned showed flexibility. They showed understanding that we all Lebanese are passing through a very difficult time, and they do feel the need for an urgent formation of a unity government.
You say that even though when they were in Parliament trying to get his name across, Hariri, Hezbollah's MPs actually abstained from ever naming him, even though Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah had actually shown and said that he did not mind Hariri becoming prime minister. So you don't think that can actually impact how fast or maybe what ministries they're going to maybe argue on? Or
I think the real position of Hezbollah was outlined by Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah about 2.5 or 3 months ago, when he said that he would go along with Prime Minister Saad Hariri becoming prime minister. I think that was the important endorsement. Everybody did not expect Hezbollah members of parliament to name Prime Minister Saad Hariri. That was understandable. But they did not name somebody else.
Right.
Which means it was a form of a tacit approval, if you wish.
So if we don't say anything, we're not objecting, but we're not necessarily endorsing, basically.
What's more important, the statement that our colleague Mr. Raad gave as they came out from the consultations. He gave a very positive statement, saying they will go along, they will do everything they can to expedite the formation of a unity government. And his position was very much the position of other major parliamentary blocs.
What can we expect from this new government? I mean, it has been over 2 years and a half of a presidential vacuum. Lebanon has been through, it is still going through a hard economic time. Real estate is up. Let's not even talk about foreign investment, and generally there's been, you know, with the Syrian crisis nearby, there's been a lot of negativity surrounding the country, whether it's in the media, locally. So can we expect this to be, people keep talking about this new era. Do you think it's going to be a new era, or just?
It is indeed a new era for many reasons. Lebanon has passed through very difficult points. Very difficult periods. One was the possibility of a sectarian conflict, and we bypassed that, luckily, and mainly because of the dialogue between the Future movement and Hezbollah. And so that was the most immediate threat. And then the other threat was a terrorist threat, either internal acts of violence or an incursion across the border. The Lebanese borders are practically sealed, and the intelligence agencies are cooperating with each other. So the security situation is mostly under control. The most immediate problem from the vacancy of the presidency has become economic. And all the indicators showed that if we continued at the same pace, Lebanon would fail economically. And I think the move by the governor of the central bank, Mr. Riyad Salemi, showed that we were practically at the end of the line. And I think everybody realized something needs to be done. And the move that Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri took in endorsing General Aoun was a very bold and courageous move. And it proved to be the right move, because the mood in the street quickly supported.
Well, did it prove to be the right move, or we don't know yet? So I want to basically quote somebody on what you just said, the Hariri's move. Rami Khouri, who is the founding director and now senior policy fellow of the Issam Faris Institute for Public Policy and International Affairs, recently wrote, and I quote, "The simple answer to why Hariri caved in and backed Aoun's presidency would appear to be that Hariri saw which way the wind was blowing in Lebanon, for in all three critical categories of domestic power, his star was declining." Do you agree?
I don't agree with that statement, honestly. I think that...
so you don't agree that his star is declining in some way?
No, clearly.
So it wasn't a last resort to back on when he had so vehemently for so many years stated...
No, I don't think so. And I think the mood from the other side, if you wish, from Hezbollah was a very positive mood, because the Iranians feel, like the Americans and like the Saudis, that a stable Lebanon is something that is good for all parties concerned. For Hezbollah, a stable Lebanon is a requirement for them to continue their presence in Syria. For the Saudis, a stable Lebanon is an area where there is Sunni-Shia dialogue and possibly Saudi-Iranian understanding.
But how do you see Hezbollah?
I don't think it was, I think...
But Hezbollah didn't really... This is what Hezbollah's always wanted. Yes,
but Hezbollah for a while refused Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri to be nominated as Prime Minister.
If there was no Aoun, but they had never said that.
No. There was a lot of negative feeling towards Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri when the Yemeni war was at its peak. So everybody caved in. Everybody caved in. But most importantly, I think that the American presidential elections had a role to play. That people felt that with a new president in the White House, the rules of the game would change. And so everybody tried to block in and secure their local winnings before there was a new president in the White House.
How is that? I'll get back to that in a second, but just really quickly, how do you see the American elections, which, by the way, they're going to elect a new president in exactly 48 hours, how does it affect Lebanon in any way?
Well, Lebanon is an Iranian-American fault line. And I must say that we are seeing some stability in Lebanon as an aftermath of the nuclear accord between Iran and America and the West on the other hand. Lebanon, after the nuclear accords, was no longer a fault line between Iran and the West. And that really was a positive factor locally, in that the tensions between the different factions who have regional alignments have decreased. But the new president in the White House, whether it would be Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, have had a certain position towards Iran that is more radical and more antagonistic than the Obama administration.
Coming up next, Democrat Hillary Clinton is heading into the final day of a tight White House race against Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching the English newscast. Iraqi Kurdish fighters are exchanging heavy fire with ISIL fighters as they advance from two directions on a town held by the armed group just 13 kilometers east of the city of Mosul. The town of Bashika has been surrounded by Kurdish Peshmerga forces for weeks now. Today's push appears to be the most serious yet to drive ISIL from the area, the group's last major urban bastion in the country. An Israeli court has sentenced a Palestinian teenager to 12 years in prison for the stabbing of two Israelis, one of the most high-profile attacks in a recent wave of violence. 14-year-old Ahmed Manasra was earlier found guilty of the attempted murder of a 20-year-old and a 12-year-old boy in annexed East Jerusalem. He was 13 at the time of the October 2015 attack that led to a propaganda war between Palestinians and Israelis, sparked by surveillance footage later released of the incident. Manasra carried out the attack along with his 15-year-old cousin Hassan, who was shot dead by security forces. The two Israelis were seriously wounded. Democrat Hillary Clinton is heading into the final day of a tight White House race against Republican Donald Trump, with new momentum after the FBI said no criminal charges were forthcoming in investigation of her email practices. Both Clinton and Trump will spend the day racing across a handful of battleground states that could swing Tuesday's election, which polls show is tilting toward Clinton. FBI Director James Comey again sent shockwaves through the race by telling Congress on Sunday that investigators had worked around the clock to complete a review of newly discovered emails and found no reason to change their July finding that Clinton was not guilty of criminal wrongdoing in her use of a private email server while Secretary of State. Trump, who has not said whether he will respect the results of Tuesday's election, questioned the thoroughness of the FBI review and said the issue would not go away. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri says the recent political breakthrough in Lebanon is an opportunity to reaffirm the country's Arab identity and restore its ties with the GCC. An aide to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad affirms deep bilateral ties between Damascus and Beirut after meeting with Lebanese President Michel Aoun. And Iraqi Kurdish fighters are exchanging heavy fire with ISIL fighters as they advance from two directions on the town of Bashika. Those are your top stories for this Monday. I'm Linda Tamim, and I thank you all for watching.